Making our way through these chapters in Exodus, these laws that God gave to instruct the judges of Israel. We're up now to Exodus chapter 21, verse 15. Who's going to read it?
I'll read this one. And he who strikes his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. He who kidnaps a man and sells him, or if he is found in his hand, shall surely be put to death. And he who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death.
All right, basically 3 instructions here. Number 1 has to do with the murder of a parent. Number 2 has to do with a kidnapping. And then number 3 has to do with a child cursing the parent. So let's break these apart one by one. Verse 15, he who strikes his father and mother, well, strikes them so that they would die.
Mm-hmm. It's not just a slap to the face.
No, or it's, you ever seen a 3-year-old, kind of beaten in frustration on dad or something like that? Some of us have lived that and we just don't know it. So, no, it's talking about this. And so a child wouldn't be spared the sentence of capital punishment that the verses just preceding spoke of, just because it's their parent, right? So that's one aspect of it. If you murder your parent, then you're liable to the capital punishment. Then in verse 16, it deals with the thing about kidnapping. Where are we with that?
It says very verse 6, he who kidnaps a man and sells him, or if he is found in his hand, shall surely be put to death. So clearly the Bible is talking about, or God is commanding and sharing that kidnapping is an offense as well.
This sort of, capital offense. Mm-hmm. This sort of idea of man stealing and kidnapping into slavery, it's as if God's saying, you murdered that person. Mm. It's not a property crime, it's a capital crime. It's a crime against the person. Mm-hmm. And that's a pretty important distinction that you can make between the practice of slavery in the biblical world in Israel and the practice of slavery as it was throughout much of human history, especially, you would say, the history of the United States in those wretched days of the slave trade from Africa. That was flat out kidnapping, man stealing, and selling into perpetual slavery. It was never practiced that way in ancient Israel.
Which is so hard, I think, for us to, living in the Western civilization, to think about, because when we think about slavery, we always read these verses of slaves, selling a slave, buying a slave. And we think immediately, I always think, I'm thinking about, the movie Roots,
something like that, sure.
Kunta Kinte and all that kind of stuff. But it's really more. And I like this verse because it really is separating. No, that style of kidnapping, Israel never would go over to a neighboring nation and just steal all their children and then do that.
Yes.
Of course, war was a situation. Maybe
a captured soldier, something like that might be a different situation.
In lieu of killing the soldier, be a slave for us. It's interesting that I like this distinction here. It really helps us.
It's that picture that you're painting. It's the unwilling slavery as opposed to the willing slavery. That's what the Bible talks about. Is that it's a willing act on the part of someone who's entering into
indentured service.
Yeah, because you have to. You got a debt you can't pay. You got an obligation you can't fulfill. Something like that. You may not be happy about it, but it's just what you have to do. There are people who are not happy about paying their credit card balance every month. But they you got to do it, or you'll get into trouble. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. And the weight that this law is that kidnapping, it is a capital offense, and
it's kind of interesting there. Is God kind of lays out that you won't be found guilty if you only have the person in your possession. He says there, or if he is found in his hands, it's not the idea that it's the person, but it's the payment for the person. If that's found in the seller's hands, they're still guilty of kidnapping.
Exactly.
And that's kind of interesting.
Exactly. If I kidnap somebody and sell them, I can't say, well, look, what guy? I don't know where the guy is. I don't know how he got over there. No, if I got the money, it proves that the crime was committed, and that can be traced. And capital offense, right? Capital offense. Oh. Yeah. Now we close out with verse 17. This additional law here, with he who curses his father or mother shall surely be put to death. And I know that there are people, critics love to read the Bible and go, whoa, look at this. All you got to do is say a swear word against your parent and they'd kill him in the Old Testament days. Is this what's going on here with this?
Well, it's not really. It wasn't a curse. It was really in that culture, it was like a death threat, like with this malicious, slanderous, I am going to murder you, Mom.
The declaration of the desire that they would be dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really what we're talking about. We're not just talking about, a profanity being uttered or something. But was it just that simple? Okay, I mean, hypothetical situation here. Little Johnny curses, his dad. Can the dad just execute the boy? Well, you broke the law. Can he do that? Is that how it worked in ancient Israel?
Probably wished it worked like
well,
that. But
look, parents everywhere might find some sympathy.
Exactly, yeah. But no, I mean, it doesn't work like that.
Right.
The power and the authority does not rest in the parents' hands, but God has laid it out so that the power and the authority rest in the judges and not in the parents. And so this would
now,
go before the
was
judges.
this common in the ancient world?
That this would be carried out and that the child would be put to death?
No, was it common in the ancient world that the power wasn't in the hand of the parents, but in the power of judges?
No.
Oh yes, you're absolutely you're absolutely correct.
Right. Okay.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm
Good.
agreeing
I
with
thought
you.
it
Yeah.
was, yeah.
No, you had it right.
Because
this was rare. Absolutely. One example of this, and it's not the only culture that was like this, but a remarkable is in Roman law. They had, and they even had the Latin phrase for it that I'm kind of vaguely remembering, but I don't want to say it because I'll probably get it wrong. But they even had the Latin phrase for it that signified the absolute power of a father over his family. Wow. And under Roman law, literally, a father could kill all of his children and the law couldn't do anything about it. He was the absolute master of his home. Now, Jewish law, Old Testament law, the law reflecting God's heart says, no, child, you can't make the death threat against your parents, but we're not going to let the parents decide either the crime or the punishment. Bring it to the judges, and they will sort it out. Therefore, as a practical matter, this was rarely, if ever, carried out, because that power wasn't put in the hands of maybe a very frustrated parent. Actually, it was taken over and given to impartial judges.
Which is so beautiful to think about in today's society and culture. The idea of euthanasia. Let's get rid of all those old people. They're sucking out their Social Security and they're destroying the economy, whatever. Let's get rid of those guys. Really is protecting society. This whole.
You think it's that way now? You just wait. This sort of bulge that's working its way. You think of a snake that swallows something big. This bulge that's making its way through our society. The big flood of elderly baby boomers has yet to come. And a younger generation is going to be very tempted to say, I'm not saying murder them all, but let's usher them out as quickly as possible, because it's going to be much to their advantage to do so. But we see biblically and just common sense, if you've got a cultural situation where the young make war on the old, and the very foundations of your culture are shaken. I think we already see a bit of this in our own culture with an unhealthy idealization of youth. It hasn't always been that way. In biblical culture, people wanted to be grown up. People wanted to be old and wise and that. And now the push is everybody wants to be young. Well, look, we're not going to deny that there's not some advantages to youth and all of that. But listen, we don't want people to buy into this unbiblical idea of this hyper idealization of youth. And part of the protection of this proper distinction of the generations, that's part of what is spelled out by the Mosaic law and God's heart being expressed through it. So, okay, we'll push the pause button here.
Yeah.
Come back to it, carrying on through chapter 20.